Good evening, councillors. Welcome to the Development Applications Committee meeting of the 18th of August 2020, commencing at 6:03 p.m. and being held remotely via Zoom. Note that as with all City of Newcastle meetings, this meeting is being live streamed and will be accessible via the City of Newcastle's website and also via YouTube. Can I begin, as always, with our Indigenous Acknowledgement? The City of Newcastle acknowledges that we are meeting on the traditional country of the Awabakal and Worimi peoples. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and continuing relationship with the land, and that they are the proud survivors of more than 200 years of dispossession. Council reiterates its commitment to address disadvantages and attain justice for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples of this community. Almighty God, we humbly ask you to bless this meeting, direct and prosper our deliberations, the advancement of your glory and the true welfare of the people of Newcastle. Ladies and gentlemen, will you honour the memories of those who have served and died that we might meet here in peace? Thank you, councillors. Councillors, do I have any apologies or requests for leave of absence? Councillors, just to let you know that I've received an apology and request for a leave of absence from the Lord Mayor this afternoon. Very sadly, one of the Lord Mayor's family members, her sister, passed away last week. So in acknowledging her absence this evening, could I also request that we express and record in the minutes our condolences both to her, but also to her parents, former Councillor Scobie and Mrs Scobie, for the loss of their daughter. Could I have a mover of apologies and leave of absence, please? Moved by Councillor Winnie Bast, seconded by Councillor Duncan. All those in favour, please raise your hand. All those against? Declare the motion carried unanimously. Councillors, are there any declarations of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests? Councillor Luke.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I'll declare a non-pecuniary less than significant conflict of interest for item 26. The DA in Maryville, and I'll just note that I own a commercial property in Maryville, but I believe it's less than significant as it is not close, it's only in the same suburb, but nowhere near this actual DA and would have no impact on this DA.
Thanks, Councillor Luke. Councillor Ruffo.
Declan.
We'll come back to you in a minute. Councillor Robinson, Councillor Ruffo.
Thank you. I wish to declare a non-pecuniary significant conflict with item 25, DA 2017/01376. As I've previously stated, one of the objectives that spoke at Public Voice is generously donated to the fundraiser that I run, raising money for breast cancer research. And so I'll handle this by removing myself from the discussion.
Thanks, Councillor Ruffo. Would you mind just clarifying? I think you just said that item number 25, but that's for a DA in Hamilton. I think that you might mean item number 17 at the end of the agenda.
Yes. Sorry, item 17, the notice of motion, sorry.
49500.
Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Is Jason Dunn here? I didn't see her.
Councillor Dunn's on the call.
All right, no, I just couldn't see him.
Did you have a conflict to declare?
I've got conflicts all the time, but I don't declare them.
Okay. All right. Councillors, are there any further disclosures of interest or conflict? Any further disclosures of pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests? There being none, we'll move on to the confirmation of the minutes. There are two sets of minutes for adoption this evening. The first is for the Development Applications Committee meeting of the 21st of July, and the second is for the Extraordinary Development Application Committee meeting of the 28th of July. Do I have a mover of the minutes? Moved by Councillor Mackenzie. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Duncan. All those in favour, please raise your hand. All those against? Declare the motion carried. Thank you, councillors. The first development item on the agenda this evening is item number 25, which is DA 2018/00797 for 31 to 35 Hudson Street, Hamilton.
Deputy Lord Mayor, are we going to the minutes for the Extraordinary Development Application Committee meeting?
They were adopted together, Councillor Ruffo.
Well, sorry, I didn't realise that. I thought we were only talking about the first one. I just wanted to make a declaration in relation to the Extraordinary Development Application Committee meeting.
No problem. Councillors, then to do this procedurally, can I ask that we recommit the minutes just to allow Councillor Rufo to declare a conflict? Moved by Councillor Luke, second by Councillor Mackenzie. All those in favour, please raise your hand. All those against, declare the motion carried. So we're back on the minutes, the two sets of minutes, the 21st of July and the 28th of July. They were moved from memory by Councillor Mackenzie, seconded Councillor Duncan. Councillor Rufo, would you like to speak to those?
Thank you. And again, I apologise for that. In relation to the extraordinary DAC meeting on the 28th of July, during the meeting, I inadvertently declared an interest in item 24, which was 76 Linwood Street, Wickham. The item that I had meant to declare and should have declared is interest in was item 23, which is DA 2017/01376, 495 401 Hunter Street and 364 King Street, Newcastle.
No problem. I think that you're raising that as a point of clarification. Perhaps it can be noted alongside the minutes, but that you're comfortable the minutes are still an accurate record of the meeting?
Of the meeting, yes, but I'm just needing to make that declaration at that
no problem. Well, I'll ask that the council services record that in the minutes of this meeting, just to confirm that you have clarified that, but the minutes are correct. So we've got a motion to adopt the minutes. Moved Councillor Mackenzie, seconded Councillor Duncan. All those in favour, please raise your hand. All those against, declare the minutes carried. So the first item on the agenda, councillors, is item number 25, which is DA 2018/00797 for 31 to 35 Hudson Street in Hamilton. Do I have a mover of the officer's recommendation?
I'm happy to move.
Moved by Councillor Mackenzie, seconded by Councillor Robinson. Councillor Mackenzie, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, the reason why this has come to before the DAC is just that it's in excess of the staff delegation and a slight variation on the height, but I'm happy to support it based on the report from council officers.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Robinson, did you wish to speak to the
No.
motion? No problem. Were there any further speakers? And I might just take this opportunity. Please add it to the chat if you would like to speak to any of the items on this evening's agenda, but I will, there's no names there. I'll just ask, are there any further speakers to the motion? Councillor Mackenzie, would you like your right of reply? Councillors, I'll put item number 25 to a vote then. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Robinson, Councillor Luke, Councillor Rufo, Councillor Winnie Bartz, Councillor Church, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Elliott, Councillor White, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Dunn, Councillor Clausen. As there are no votes against, I'll declare that carried unanimously. Councillors, the next item on the agenda is item number 26, DA 2019/01097, 15 Northumberland Street at Maryville. Councillors, do I have a mover? Councillor Robinson. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor White. Councillor Robinson, would you like to speak to the motion?
No.
Councillor White, would you like to speak to it as seconder? Councillors, are there any further speakers? Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I'm intending to vote against this one on the basis of the issues that have been raised in the submissions, primarily around massing and character, recognising that although work still needs to be done from the council perspective on a greater clarification around character, which has been a focus of recent things like the local strategic planning statement and so forth. This development is not objectionable other than the fact that it is in the wrong location. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Mackenzie. Any further speakers, councillors? Councillors, I just might briefly speak and note the number of submissions. The report notes that there were 43 submissions received in the first round and 26 submissions received in the second round of notifications, that there were a number of improvements made to the development as part of in between those notification periods. The report also goes to some length to indicate the spatial distance of the development from the CBD, and notes that it is really in an inner city suburb, and as a result there are changes to the demographic and the style of development that we are seeing in Maryville. I'm supportive of the development overall. I think that the revised plans do get the balance of those competing objectives correct, and so I'm happy to support it. Councillor Robinson, would you like a right of reply? Councillors, I'd ask all those in favour to please raise your hand. Councillor Robinson, Councillor Luke, Councillor Winnie Bartz, Councillor Church, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Elliott, Councillor White, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Dunn. All those against, please raise your hand. Councillor Ruffo, Councillor Mackenzie. I declare the motion carried. Councillors, the next item on the agenda is item number 27, DA 2020/00123 for 15 Clyde Street at Stockton. Do I have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Duncan, seconded by Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Duncan, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Councillor Mackenzie?
Only to say that this is a 11.1% variation of height, and there's no other reason to object this, so I'll be voting in favour of it.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie, and I acknowledge your comments. 11.1% variation on height, and no submissions were received in relation to this development. So it appears to be something that is supported by its neighbours. I'm happy to support the development. Councillors, were there any further speakers? Councillor Duncan, would you like your right of reply?
Yes.
No, thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Sorry, I thought Councillor Robinson had something to say.
He's back on mute, so you've closed the debate. I'll put that item to a vote. So it's item number 27, 15 Clyde Street. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Clausen, Councillor Luke, Councillor Ruffo, Councillor Winnie Bartz, Councillor Church, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Elliott, Councillor White, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Dunn, and Councillor Robinson. As there are no votes against, I'll declare that item carried unanimously. Councillors, the next item is item number 28, DA 2018/00266.01 for 21 to 25 Brunker Road at Adamstown. Councillors, do I have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Dunn, second by Councillor Duncan. Councillor Dunn, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Duncan as seconder. Councillors, are there any other speakers? There being none. Councillor Robinson?
This is Brunker Road, isn't it? Yeah.
Correct. Yes,
Yep.
21 to 25 Brunker Road.
Yep.
There being none, councillors, I'll put that item to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Robinson, Councillor Luke, Councillor Ruffo, Councillor Winnie Bartz, Councillor Church, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Elliott, Councillor White, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Dunn, Councillor Clausen. As there are no votes against, I'll declare that item carried unanimously. Councillors, the next item is item number 29, which is DA 2019/01351 for 18 to 20 Merewether Street, Merewether. Councillors, do I have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Robinson, just ask you to put you on mute. All good, on mute. Councillors, so just a reminder, that's 18 to 20 Merewether Street. Is there a mover of the recommendation? Councillor Mackenzie, do I have a seconder? Councillor White. Councillor Mackenzie, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Yeah, I think this is a positive development, notwithstanding a range of public submissions relating to noise and antisocial behaviour, traffic and so forth. I think the proponent has done a good job in terms of providing a plan of management associated with the site and a clear understanding of how the site will be utilised to address those concerns, to the point where I'm very satisfied that the operations won't entail the issues that have been raised in the public submissions. And I think it's a very positive development for that area, and I'm happy to support it. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Elliott.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I will not be voting for this development. I've had a number of submissions from local community members, in particular worried about parking, traffic, noise, antisocial behaviour. And in a residential area, I know that the zoning may well be okay, but the residential area around that particular development will be impacted by this. And I note that in the public voice, I requested the applicants do a social impact assessment, and they followed up with me and declined that. I don't think that's in the spirit of working respectfully and collegiately with local community, so we'll not be supporting this development.
Thanks, Councillor Elliott. Are there any further speakers, councillors? Councillors, I'm happy to support the proposal for similar reasons to those that Councillor Mackenzie put forward. There have been a range of changes actually on this DA as well since it originally came to us at Public Voice. A number of matters have been clarified, including the enforceability of the plan of management, but also around the outdoor hours and the indoor hours, the need to alert patrons to come inside to reduce some of those noise impacts. There was also concerns raised around the off-street parking and the fact that it was going to cover the footpath and cause some potential issues with pedestrians, and a number of those issues have also been addressed as part of this final DA and the conditions that are recommended to be imposed alongside it. So I'm happy to support this application. I think that this is a positive addition to Newcastle, particularly as we come out of the COVID crisis. This is a style of development that is positive for us to see in the city, and it's appropriate in this zoning. Councillors, would you like your right of reply? I believe Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Yeah, just to recognise that the traffic assessment conducted was satisfactory from Council's perspective, and the plan of management was revised actually to as a number of recommendations that are relating to the public voice and those submissions. As you mentioned, the reduced maximum patron numbers, safe dispersal, perceived safety, responsible service of alcohol and so forth. Also recognising that our conditions of consent will address those outdoor areas after 10 p.m, and noting further that the operational noise assessment was reviewed by the City of Newcastle, and that those, both in terms of patron numbers and in terms of amplified entertainment, they've been brought down into levels that are considered consistent with the residential zoning. So very happy once again to support this development.
Thanks, Councillor Mackenzie. Councillors, I'll take this by division also. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Robinson, Councillor Luke, Councillor Rufo, Councillor Winnie Bartz, Councillor Church, Councillor Byrne, Councillor White, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Dunn, Councillor Clausen. All those against, please raise your hand. Councillor Elliott, I declare that item carried. Councillors, the next item on the agenda is item number 30, which is DA 2019/01378 for 131 Beaumont Street at Hamilton. Councillors, do I have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Luke, do I have a seconder? Councillor Elliott. Councillor Luke, would you like to speak to the motion? No. Councillor Elliott? No problem. Any further speakers, councillors? No, councillors, I just then might make a very brief comment only to make mention of the fact that this is a very non-objectionable development from my perspective. However, it does note that there is a significant exceedance to FSR as a result of this development. The report, though, goes to some length and notes that the current building exceeds by 47.5%, and that the additional exceedance is considered acceptable. It's a fairly minor modification within that existing development. So I'm happy to support the recommendation that's been put forward by officers. Councillor Luke, would you like your right of reply? No. Councillors, I'll take this item by division. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Robinson, Councillor Luke, Councillor Rufo, Councillor Winnie Bartz, Councillor Church, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Elliott, Councillor White, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Dunn, Councillor Clausen. I declare that motion carried unanimously. Councillors, the next item on the agenda is item number 31, which is DA 2020/00181 for 35 Warrabrook Boulevard, Warrabrook, and 6 Hakea Place, Warrabrook. Councillors, do I have a mover of a motion? Councillor Duncan. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Dunn. Councillor Duncan.
Deputy Lord Mayor, I'd like to actually recommend that the officer's recommendation on this one be refused. This proposal has caused a significant amount of concern amongst a large number of local residents, as evidenced by the large number of submissions that this DA has received. So I certainly don't intend to support this, and I'd like to recommend that we refuse this recommendation from officers.
No problem. I'll just confirm with the seconder, Councillor Dunn, that you're happy to support Councillor Duncan's motion. Councillor Dunn?
Danny doesn't get service out of Fletcher.
Perhaps a thumbs up of some form of acknowledgement. Apologies. I just want to make sure the second is happy with the motion. Okay. He said that he's not happy. Councillors, can I ask for somebody to second Councillor Duncan's motion? Councillor McKenzie.
Yep.
Okay, so I've got a motion now moved by Councillor Duncan, seconded by Councillor McKenzie. It's a motion of refusal. Councillor Duncan, could I ask, have you got reasons for refusal that could potentially be circulated, perhaps in the chat, to make sure that every councillor is aware of the reasons? And I'd also perhaps ask, could you confirm that you've spoken to council officers in developing those, and perhaps just read through them?
Deputy Lord Mayor, yes, I have spoken to council officers about that, and I'm just trying to get my notes to copy and paste in black rather than white. So as soon as I can do that, I will post them in the chat. But I just wanted to my notes on the officer's recommendation being refused on the following grounds. One, the development is inconsistent with the aims and objectives of the IN2 light industrial zone, as it has the potential to adversely impact upon other land uses of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. And number two, the development has potential to result in adverse impacts on the surrounding environment, in particular upon air quality under the Act. And three, the development is inappropriate for the site given its proximity to residential land uses and the character of the area. Accordingly, the proposal is not in the public interest according to the Act. And I think whilst the zoning for this location may well be light industrial, and while a crematorium may technically be allowed usage on that location, I do not think that it means that it's the right thing to do, and I don't believe that the intent of the IN2 light industrial zone means that to place a crematorium within such a short distance of people's homes is a desired or even acceptable outcome. And I will attempt to post those in black rather than white.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. So just to make sure everybody's clear on the motion, it'll be posted in the chat momentarily, but Councillor Duncan's just read that. Moved by Councillor Duncan, seconded Councillor McKenzie. If you could add your name to the chat if you'd like to speak to this motion. I imagine there'll be a number of councillors. The first that I have is Councillor Ruffo. Councillor Ruffo, you're on mute.
My apologies, Deputy Lord Mayor. Councillors, the development of a crematorium 25 metres from homes is simply not the right thing to allow. I'd like to echo the concerns of the 130 plus residents that have lodged submissions raising concerns about the odours and the emissions that will be expelled into the atmosphere. We have an obligation to our residents to ensure that they're not exposed to these potentially harmful pollutants in this way. I'm advised that the Australian Cemeteries and Crematoria Association, the ACCA, have established a best practice environmental guideline for crematoriums. Now, whilst it's true that these are simply guidelines and not regulations, we should at least consider them. They are the body that governs these type of organisations. What it says is that in line with state environmental protection authorities guidelines, a buffer zone in order of 200 metres between the emission stack and neighbouring residents is desirable. In any case, a buffer zone of not less than 100 metres is recommended. And yet this DA has a distance of not even 30 metres. It is concerning also that as a council, we would only investigate when a complaint is made. Now, if emissions are invisible and or odourless as claimed, how would residents know when to complain? We need to have a better system in place. We need to have a system that is perhaps 24/7 monitoring the admissions so they can raise a concern. Yes, a crematorium is permitted in this area, but we do not have to approve it. And we can say no due to the many concerns raised. So with over 130 public submissions, the community are clearly saying no to this proposal. We need to support our residents and vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rufo. Councillor Church.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I simply wish to speak in support of Councillor Rufo's comments. We can't have an industry with a smokestack within 25 metres of houses. And if it is a smokestack and it's emitting emissions, then it needs to be monitored 24 hours a day, and for that monitoring results to be available to residents. Instead, the idea that we would be reactive and not proactive with emissions monitoring just isn't appropriate in 2020. And this is clearly not in the public interest when you look at the number of submissions, the number of residents of Warrabrook who have actively contacted nearly every councillor and made clear their claim that this is not their desire. And I simply wish to support the residents and this motion in refusing this DA. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Church. Councillor Elliott.
Yes, thank you very much, Deputy Lord Mayor. Apologies, I couldn't quite get the button quickly enough. I support the comments of Councillor Rufo and Councillor Church. I too have had many submissions. One in particular I received today really put this in perspective, and apart from agreeing with all of the points that have already made, the technical points that are already made, I received one today which really put it into perspective. In other words, you know, it's not only the pollution, it's not only the traffic, it's not only all of those issues. It's actually the fact that you're living in a neighbourhood where dogs and cats, loved animals, are being killed. They're not killed, burnt. And this provides what this fellow called the ick factor. And I think it's very emotional for people to think that pets are being burned in their neighbourhood. And it's in an inappropriate location for something that is not only going to be concerning for emissions and all of the other technical reasons that have already been raised tonight, but it's concerning on an emotional basis. It's an upsetting development for many people. The thought of what's going on in that building is very upsetting for people, and I think that's the human, you know, the human factor about all of this is something that I just reflected on this afternoon, apart from all of the other reasons. So I won't be supporting this development.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Councillor White.
Thanks, Deputy Lord Mayor. Look, I think I understand where the officers have come to, you know, that this is a permissible development, but I think, like the other speakers, it is very difficult to dismiss the significant number of residents that have contacted us and the number of issues that they've raised, and in particular the closeness of this business to residents. And I think that, as the others have said, that there is an onus on us to support the community, and I support the reasons for refusal that Councillor Duncan has popped through in the chat to us. And I also intend to support Councillor Duncan's motion to refuse.
Thanks, Councillor White. Councillors, are there any further speakers? Councillor Robinson.
Am I on?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I won't be voting for it for the fact that I've lived here for 25 years and we've had an industrial estate, and there was nothing here when we come here, and the whole industrial estate's been built out now and not one complaint from any Warrabrook residents. So it sort of opened my eyes when everyone, and you see how many, if you've had 130 by email, I've had 200 pull me up in the street. And so they're very passionate about it. They don't want it. And I agree with what the councillors have said before me. And yeah, I won't be going for it.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Any further speakers, councillors? Councillors, I will speak against the development, also in favour of Councillor Duncan and Councillor Mackenzie's motion, although in doing so, acknowledge the efforts of council officers to work with the applicant and work through this application. I think we all acknowledge that this is a fairly unusual application. Certainly, none of us were anticipating to be making a decision on a pet crematorium during this term of council, and we acknowledge that the planning regulations exist in the city, particularly the LEP, haven't been designed with this specific use in mind in a light industrial zone immediately neighbouring an R2 residential zone and so close to neighbouring properties. Thank you, Councillor Duncan, for working with council officers to develop reasons for refusal. I'm satisfied that they're robust and will be defendable in ensuring that we can put forward our best position in refusing this development. So I'm happy to support the motion that you've brought. Councillor Duncan, would you like your right of reply?
Deputy Lord Mayor, yes, thank you. Just briefly, I know that often the DA process can be long and arduous for both proponents and objectors, and I appreciate, as you've mentioned there, the work that our officers and staff have done with the proponent. But given the very large number of objections to this DA, I would like residents to feel that this council has indeed heard them and supported them. One of the people who wrote to me, and I can only assume all of us, given the volume of correspondence we've received, said we want Warrabrook to be somewhere that people want to settle down and raise their families or obtain their university education, not where they stop by solely to cremate their pet. So I would thank councillors for their support this evening on refusing that recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. I need to take this by division, but just so that we're clear, we're moving, it's an alternate motion that has been moved by Councillor Duncan. She's spoken to it at length. It's also copied in the chat. So all those in favour of Councillor Duncan's motion, please raise your hand. Councillor Robinson, Councillor Ruffo, Councillor Winnie-Bartz, Councillor Church, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Elliott, Councillor White, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Duncan. All those against, please raise your hand. Councillor Luke, Councillor Dunn. I declare the motion carried. Councillors, the next item on the agenda is item number 32, DA 2020/00044 for 304 to 464 King Street. Although I'll note that there is a note in a memo on our iPads advising that that application has been withdrawn. So we will move to the next item, which is distributed under separate cover. It's item number 33, DA 2019/01146. For 106 to 108 Gosford Road at Adamstown. Councillors, do I have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Robinson, do I have a seconder? Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Robinson, would you like to speak to the motion? No. Councillor Mackenzie? Councillors, are there any other speakers? Councillor Church?
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I'm happy to support this DA, and I want to note that I think our public voice process has worked very well. The initial development, in my view, was 3 stories and nearly 12 to 14 townhouses. And that to me was a significant overdevelopment and would have created overshadowing, privacy issues and lack of solar access for neighbours, and certainly wasn't supported by the neighbourhood in the street. There have been various community meetings. There's been meetings with the developers. The applicant has put a number of concessions forward, and what we're voting on today is a very different DA. It's much smaller, only 10 townhouses. It's only 2 stories rather than 3, and I think it suits all of our zoning and planning codes, and I'm happy to support it on that basis. But I think that having got here is evidence that the process can work if there's goodwill from both sides.
Thank you, Councillor Church. Councillor Elliott? Apologies. Councillor Mackenzie, you had your hand up a moment ago.
Look, I think Councillor Church has covered it. I think that, I'm very pleased that both the goodwill that was shown by the proponent and by the objectors has resulted in what I think is a superior DA to the one that was originally proposed. one which can move forward with the support of the community. And yeah, as Councillor Church mentioned, I think as a consequence of the public voice and the goodwill shown by both sides, I think we have a better proposal before us than we did originally.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Any further speakers? Councillors, I'll just speak in favour of the officer's recommendation as well. It's already been noted, but originally the DA before us was for 12 three-storey dwellings. However, there has been substantial modification to the proposal as a result of us actually laying it on the table, allowing for there to be a space and time for further deliberations and discussions with the applicant and objectors. And I want to particularly acknowledge not only the movement that the applicant has shown, but also that of objectors and the process, especially that Ms. Bisson followed in terms of following up with meetings and arranging for those discussions. The amendments before us this evening resulted in a decrease in the overall number of dwellings from 12 rather to 10, with all dwellings now being reduced to just 2 stories rather than the 3 stories that were originally proposed. This has been re-notified on a number of occasions. We've obviously, councillors have received quite a number of submissions from the public, and it is positive to see that those have been taken into consideration by the applicant, and it has resulted in a much better application that does meet the planning requirements for this area. So I'm happy to support the motion that's been put forward, and thank again the officers as well as the applicant and the objectors for their respective work in coming to this resolution. Councillor Robinson, would you like your right of reply?
No, just exactly what you said, Declan, with Miss Bisson and the applicant and even the objectors. They've all worked together to come to this, and seems everyone's happy. And as John Church said, the public voice and getting together has worked on this occasion, and everyone's now happy.
Thanks, Councillor Robinson. Councillors, I'll take this by division. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Robinson, Councillor Luke, Councillor Rufo, Councillor Winnie Bartz, Councillor Church, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Elliott, Councillor White, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Dunn, Councillor Clausen. As there are no votes against, I'll declare that item carried unanimously. Councillors, that ends the ordinary part of the Development Applications Committee agenda. We now move to a notice of motion, which is item number 17, a rescission motion for DA 2017/01376. I believe Councillor Rufo declared an interest, so I'll just wait a moment for him to be placed in the waiting room. Councillors, I'm happy to move the motion as printed in the papers from the chair. Could I ask for a seconder? Councillor Winnie Bartz, thank you. Councillors, this rescission motion is brought because I think that Council erred procedurally when it first considered this matter when it came to Council. The background of the rescission motion provides some advice as to why that was the case, but essentially we were in a position where a development was refused on grounds that I think might have been complicated and in fact potentially impossible for Council to defend had the development gone to the Land and Environment Court. What this motion proposes is not for an approval, but rather for a process where Council can seek some further advice from the UDCG. Councillors will recall that when this item originally came to Council, there were various claims made about the UDCG's position on the final development. And as the report identified, although the recommendations the UDCG had made had been included in the final proposal that was before us, the UDCG hadn't been given an opportunity to review the final development, and that was something that was raised by both the applicant and objectors as being potentially of concern. The motion before us this evening is of 2 parts, the first of which is to rescind the refusal that I believe that we made in error at our last meeting. The second part is that the DA as a whole lay on the table so that it can be referred back to the UDCG and the numerous concerns that were raised by councillors and the community can be addressed by officers, and a referral process to the UDCG occur before we see this development again. I think that this is a sensible approach to resolve this matter and hopefully ensure that we can make a decision based on informed advice and of course, if a refusal is to come forward in future, that it's done so on the strongest and most defendable grounds, so we don't leave ratepayers burdened with a very significant legal bill that we're unable to defend in court. So I'm happy to move the motion as printed. Councillor Luke, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Just a quick question on this motion. As you know, it's very rare we see rescission motions on DAs. Now, I may have I've been on council for quite a while. I might be mixing up a previous rule with an existing rule, but just a question to either the CEO or the manager of regulatory and planning. Previously, my understanding was you could not rescind a DA once the developer or the applicant had been notified of the result. My understanding is that's still correct, but that could be the first question. The second part of that question, this DA from the dates was done on, I think it was the 25th of August, being a Tuesday. The 29th was when a rescission motion was put in, being the Saturday. Does that mean in the entire week, that rest of that week that this DA was heard, the applicant was not notified of the result? Two parts of that question.
I can address both.
Well, let me just finish. Is this normal that we don't notify, or was there a reason that they weren't notified?
Councillor Luke, I can address both of those parts. The first of which is that you're right. A development matter cannot be rescinded if the applicant is notified of the outcome. But I draw your attention to the fact that we actually considered this matter at the extraordinary DAC meeting on the 28th of July. The rescission motion was submitted the next morning, the 29th of July, some hours after the meeting, to ensure that that process was carried out appropriately. Obviously, okay. I'm mildly conflicted because I'm the mover of the motion, so I might just seek confirmation either from the CEO or from the manager, legal and governance, if they have anything to add.
That's okay. If it's only a day, that's not an issue. I was more concerned. I was thinking there was 4 more days in between.
Yeah.
Just confirm, Deputy Lord Mayor and Councillor Luke, that that's correct. That timeline you've just outlined is correct. Typically, we would notify the applicant of the result the following day. So if a rescission motion hadn't been lodged the following day, then the likelihood is that it wouldn't have been possible on the basis that we would have notified the applicant of the council's refusal.
Thank you. And it was a fair point to raise, Councillor Luke, and especially given it is an unusual process for us to have, it is worth following up on. Although I would acknowledge that unfortunately this isn't the first time that we have been in a procedurally complicated issue as a result of refusals being moved from the floor of council without necessarily seeking advice. I'm reminded of the Merewether Vet DA we saw a number of weeks ago, which was originally voted to be refused, although the same development came back to us a month later and was unanimously, if my memory serves me correctly, approved. It is important that we are aware of these procedural issues. It does have a significant consequence. So I would like to make sure that we're following the appropriate process. Councillors, were there any further speakers on this item? Councillor Church.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I'll be voting against this rescission motion. I believe that a decision to refuse should stand. It was certainly made in a democratically properly constituted development applications meeting. I would like to inform councillors that some more work has been done with staff as recommended to develop some more robust reasons for refusal. And I'd request that councillor services might share those reasons for refusal in our chat area for the review and consideration of councillors. What we have here is a development that remains a constrained site, a narrow site, which has very serious implications for neighbours on both sides. A lack of solar access, issues around setbacks, and even inconsistencies with, of course, the landscape provisions of the Newcastle Development Control Plan. And of course, there's the overarching issue of the public interest, with so many people already residents in Worth apartments and so many new residents about to enter into Sky apartments and Sky residences next door. Each of those will have a negative impact on them as a result of this particular DA. So I submit these revised reasons for refusal and place them before councillors for further consideration, but I will be voting against this rescission motion.
Thank you, Councillor Church. Could I just confirm that your intention would be to move them as a substantive foreshadowed motion? Is that your intention?
It's mine, exactly. I would like to return and move that this DA be formally refused and these reasons for refusal be offered for councillors to consider.
Thank you, Councillor Church. I just have a procedural question. If this motion is defeated, the original motion stands and the original reasons for refusal stand. I'm not sure exactly what you're trying to achieve, but I'm not sure that this process is going to allow you to replace the original reasons for refusal unless the motion is rescinded in the first instance.
Well, what I'd like councillors to know that before they vote for this rescission motion, that the reason stated from the chair in that the grounds aren't appropriate is not necessarily a strong reason, and subsequent work has been done, which should give councillors confidence that they can stand to refuse this application and that it would stand up in any court challenge.
Thank you, Councillor Church. I don't mean for this to be a back and forth debate, but to be clear, these weren't the reasons given for the original refusal. These additional reasons couldn't have been used as justification for the original reasons of refusal. I think it's worth just acknowledging that point. I've got another speaker, Councillor White.
Can I take your point, Councillor Clausen? What you're saying is not correct. That what we have before us are the proper language of the planning instruments that actually reflect the reasons for that refusal, but they give substance to it and they quote the necessary legislative framework.
We'll agree to disagree on that. Councillor White.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Mine was a procedural question which you have just answered, so thank you.
Councillors, are there any further speakers? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Look, I think what Councillor Church is doing is really trying to provide the robustness around the reasons for the refusal. I note that the notice of motion is here to rescind it. However, it is not necessary to do a rescission motion, given that we are in a position now, practically, to be able to refuse it on grounds that have been developed in consultation with the staff to support the original motion to refuse. So procedurally, yes, we need to get it right. But what Councillor Church is doing is trying to facilitate this solution so that the decision that was made by this council can be defendable, not so that we can toss it around backwards and forwards and come back again. He's basically done the work. The council officers have been very supportive and helped him to do that work. And it's up to us to acknowledge that we're in a position which is a bit tricky and we have to follow procedure, but let's not get overly technical about this. This is a good piece of work that has been done by officers with Councillor Church to enable us to refuse and to do it in a defendable way. So we don't need to rescind. We really only need to have the supportable information that supports the original motion to refuse. So in practical terms, that's what he's trying to do, and I support him in that. I think it's eminently sensible, and I don't want to get tied up in knots because we want to make sure that it goes back to somebody else and we can redebate it in future. We don't need to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Neither you nor I are planning lawyers, and the area of planning law is much more than what might appear to be common sense. I would if there is a moment, just to seek some advice, either from you, CEO, or from Ms. Bisson, just around the legal weight that would be given to additional reasons for refusal that weren't included in Council's original motion for refusal, potentially some advice on how we facilitate Councillor Church's suggestion.
Can I just comment, because I might add to that question if it's okay, Declan?
Yep.
Just and I'll be brief, because I actually agree. I don't believe these extra reasons can be added in this motion. It's a rescission motion. If it doesn't get up, that's the end of the matter. But my concern is I actually don't see a need that it needs to be added either. My question from this would be, on what basis is it being claimed that council can only use as evidence in a land and environment court matters that were raised during the council and discussed in a council motion to refuse? Because I don't believe that's correct. And in fact, regularly, precedences would be used in a land environment court regularly, and they certainly are not ever part of our, or very rarely, if ever, part of our motion to decide. I actually don't believe the council in a land environment action would be limited to solely those reasons given in a motion as they're worded in a motion by councillors anyway.
Thanks, Councillor Luke. I just would remind you, though, that for each item on the agenda this evening where we have voted in support of a development, that there is a schedule included as part of the attachments of reason why consent was given, and they're documented and grounded in planning law.
That's okay, but what I'm asking is, since when does the court not accept evidence other than that?
I'll seek some advice from Ms. Bisson.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor, the reasons for refusal form the first basis when it goes to court for the Land and Environment Court. So the reasons of refusal are very important of the main basis. There's nothing like, obviously more information can come in when you have statement of facts and contentions through the process. However, they should be based around the reasons for refusal.
Thanks, Ms. Bisson. That was my understanding also, and it actually just highlights where councillors are planning on bringing a motion that is an alternate motion to the officer's recommendation. It is really important that we engage with officers so that the wording is correct in the first instance, so we don't end up in positions such as this. Are there any further speakers, councillors? Councillor Elliott, you have spoken previously. You're asking a question.
With your indulgence, Lord Mayor, I would like to just ask a clarification, please, Deputy Lord Mayor, and that is that I understand that this is the information in the chat from Councillor Church is actually supporting the original refusal. Is that right? Not new, totally new grounds, but supporting the original refusal. I think I understand putting the language around the original points of refusal to make them more supportable and defendable. Is that right, Councillor Church? Or are there new, absolutely new conditions in here?
Councillor Church, you're on mute.
My apologies. I largely follow the original reasons for refusal, but a few others have been added.
Thank you.
Ms. Bisson, I noticed you were off mute, just in case you wanted to add to that response.
Thank you. I was just probably going to add that there's conditions, there's reasons for refusal that have been taken out, and then there's further added, as Councillor Church said.
Thanks, Ms. Bisson. Indeed, my notice of motion does note that there are a number of the grounds for refusal originally cited did contain factual inaccuracies. So I understand Councillor Church's point. It is good that he's now gone through the process to develop some reasons for refusal with council officers, although they don't reflect what a council originally adopted. The other point I'd make, councillors, is that when we considered this matter last, there was another councillor in the room, in the Zoom, that has since left us and clarified that he had a significant pecuniary conflict of interest. It is worth noting that that actually does change the dynamic, and it is important that we do consider this properly with councillors that aren't conflicted and can make a decision that is robust and defendable. And that is the reason why I brought a motion that does seek to lay this item on the table and allow for that further engagement to occur with UDCG, but also for those concerns noted by councillors. I have to say, I did vote originally, or intend to vote originally, in support of this development. I had believed that the balance had been struck, but it does appear that there are a number of unresolved concerns, and I think it is appropriate that those now have the opportunity to be resolved between the applicant, the council officers and the objectors, in the hope that we might be able to consider a development that does get the balance right in future. Councillor Robinson, would you like your right of reply? No, apologies. My right of reply. My apologies. I had moved this motion. I'm sorry, I've just taken note. Councillor Robinson moved the previous motion. I have closed the debate. I'll therefore put the notice of motion by division. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Clausen, Councillor Winnie Bartz, Councillor Byrne, Councillor White, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Dunn. All those against, please raise your hand. Councillor Luke, Councillor Church, Councillor Elliott. Councillor Robinson, your video flashed off. Could you just clarify how it was that you voted for the record? You're on mute.
I didn't vote for the rescission motion, no.
Councillor Robinson voted against. I'll declare the motion carried. Councillors, that concludes the development application committee meeting for the 18th of August. We have workshops after this meeting. Thanks for your attendance.
Workshop,